Welcome to today's session, Number Talks, virtual or face-to-face. I am Kim Snowball, your facilitator today, and I'm looking forward to offering this session because it is one of my favorites. So let's begin with looking at the training guide. Before we start the content, remember that there will be throughout this session 3 passcodes that you will hear. And so please jot them down because when you go to step 3 at the very end to access your certificate, you will need those to pass the, per se, assessment of this session. Step 2 is an important piece because it is where you will have access to downloading your own set of virtual Number Talks slides. You'll be prompted to actually make a copy of that, and you can use that in your classrooms. There are also 2 additional videos that talk about reflections. We're not going to actually watch them during the session today, as well as some insight from Dr. Joe Bowler from Stanford University. And then the last one is an article. So let's begin. Our learning goal today is to embed Number Talks into your current practices throughout the year with fidelity. This is not Math Talks, but this is really Number Talks. It's a very structured, purposeful set of problems where you have an ultimate goal to allow students to share their thinking, to share their strategies, so students can learn from them. It's really going to be changing the culture of of what they believe math to be, not procedures, but actual the thinking and the strategies that go behind it, and maybe see the connectedness. For failure is only the opportunity to begin again more successfully. And that article that I was talking about in the training guide really digs deep into this because I truly believe this. This is one of my favorite quotes because it just changes the mindset of what failure is. It really is an opportunity to learn and begin again. The article, In Schools, Are We Measuring What Matters? That's the article that you have the link to in the training guide. My favorite quote from there is that when students are in that failure zone, there's that I'm stupid. But we need to replace this. And this is what I love about what Dr. Angela Duckworth stresses, is that we need to replace it with another thought, which is I'm learning. And that's that opportunity to begin again more successfully. And so this is what I love about Number Talks because it's a great environment for students to see that learning is the byproduct of productive struggle. So as we think about kids that raise their hand for just the correct answer, this is really what we're going to undo. The hand raising kind of is distracting because it gives permission sometimes when we call on one student to have the thinking stop. And so we're going to not be doing hand raising. We're going to be focusing on I'm thinking, I have a strategy, I have 2 strategies. And then we're going to be looking at when students start sharing strategies about I agree, I disagree, I need some more clarification. And so we have some wonderful sentence starters for students. So keep in mind, the hands go down, the thinking goes up, and that's what we really want to be focusing on. Remember, Number Talks builds fluency, and here's why. When we think about the definition of fluency that comes with our Kentucky academic standards and the math standards, this is really a key piece. This is the language that is directly taken from the standards. There are 4 components of fluency. And sometimes people think fluency is just fast. It's about being fast, but that's about being efficient, carrying out and keeping track of the problems and making use of results. So which is going to be the most efficient? And so that is what develops. That's a byproduct of doing Number Talks because students are seeing multiple ways to actually solve problems and then having a toolbox of strategies. Accuracy is part of fluency, the correct answer. So we need to be thinking and being critical consumers when we think about different strategies because some, if you haven't tested them, might seem correct the first time, but maybe after repeating it with other types of numbers, it might not be the strategy that will give you accurate results. Flexibility, that's one that I really feel like is a key piece here, because we are now being able to see that numbers are flexible. And through the strategies that they start using, especially when they're thinking about our whole number strategies as well as our fractions, that numbers, whether they're whole or fractions, are also can be decomposed and recomposed to make other numbers, so that you have additional ways to solve the problem. And then appropriateness, being able to know which particular procedure or strategy to use. And so when we think about this chart, and this chart came from the Kentucky Academic Standards as well. So when we think about this chart and how it shows the relationship between these four components, that will help them be fluent in mathematics. Take a minute to now put on a student hat, take off your teacher hat. How will your body react when you are presented to solve this problem mentally if you haven't set a culture that has allowed you to feel safe and secure in just focusing on the math, not thinking about, am I going to come up with the right answer, and the stressors that are outside that we sometimes impose on ourselves? If we created this culture, could you solve this mentally using multiple strategies? So think through and hit the pause button and give yourself a few minutes just to come up with mental math strategies. You may have more than one. You may have, unfortunately, you might just have the traditional algorithm. And if that's the case, that's good to know as well. So here you go. Solve this mentally. 18 times 5. Now that you've solved it and you've come up with some strategies, I want you to listen to how other students are solving this problem. This is part of the video that I had given you the link to. So we're just going to just listen to a little snippet of Dr. Joe Bowler from Stanford University talk about number talks.
So we're going to hear now from some Stanford students who were asked to solve this problem and hear the different methods they used.
That would be 90.
Okay, and how did you get 90?
Well, first I doubled 18, getting 36, then I doubled that, getting 72, and then I added 18 again, so
okay,
that was my
90.
And how did you do that?
So I take 18 and I have that. 9 times 5, 45. 9 times 5, 45. Add them together, 90.
18 times 5 is 80.
How'd you get 80?
5 times 10 plus 5 times 8. No, 90.
90.
And can you just describe?
So as you see, number talks, a simple problem of 18 times 5 yielded so many different strategies on that. So let's take a look at halving and doubling strategy, where you actually take one number and you're really taking the factor of 2 out of it and using that 2 factor to double the other number. So as our 18 times 5, we're really looking at it as 9 times 2. So we're taking a step back and decomposing that number. 18 is no longer just an 18. And that's a powerful learning. It's an aha, because so many times students will only think of that number 18 as that's the number. That's what you want me to do. They don't think of it as all the other factors that can make up 18. And so when you do that, you create this flexible relationship between numbers and say, okay, now I can actually take that 2 and regroup it with the 5. And through that associative property, I've now changed the problem. Instead of 9 times 2 times 5, now it's 9 times 2 times 5, which is an easy strategy to use to solve mentally 18 times 5, now 9 times 10, which we all can think through is 90. if you've never experienced that one, you're going to be having the same ahas as many teachers and students that I've worked with in the past that are amazed and they say, okay, give me another one, because they're constantly wanting to check, does it work all the time, and verifying that. You may begin thinking about resources that can help facilitate these number talks. Sherry Parrish has a great series of 2 books that were released for mental math computation. The first was the blue, dealing with all whole number computation. The second deals with fractions, decimals, and percentages. The blue book does go down into kindergarten, where students are looking at reckon recs, 10 frames, dot patterns, and then, like I said, the green book then moves it into fractions, decimals, and percentages. On the right-hand side, Making Number Talks Matter and Digging Deeper, Making Number Talks Matter Even More are by Ruth Parker and Kathy Humphreys, and they do a fabulous job at sharing strategies that are commonly used during number talks that students might share with you. And they target grades 4 through 10. Before we take a look at a little classroom clip, let's just think about this quote. And I have to say, Sherry Parrish said it marvelously when she said, "Our classrooms are filled with students and adults who think of mathematics as rules and procedures to memorize." And she says students and adults because it's students and their teachers and administrators. The second part of that quote is, "Without understanding the numerical relationship that provides the foundation for these rules." And so we think, how can we take what students already know and build upon that? So let's watch a little clip from Sherry Parrish and Number Talks.
Think about this problem here. Show me with your thumb when I've given you enough time. Okay, somebody want to tell me an answer? Arzu, what'd you get?
46.
Okay, you might get a different answer. Mary, what'd you get?
44.
Madison?
36.
36. Okay. Is everybody happy with one of these 3?
Yes.
Okay, all right, now we have something to defend, right? So when you tell me your strategy, I want you to tell me what answer you're going to defend. Okay, Saya, tell me what you're defending.
36.
36, okay. Go ahead and tell me what you did.
70 minus 30. I knew that was 40. So then I minus 4. That equaled 36.
I see.
Once
Okay.
again, I switched those 2 out.
You did, so you did 70 minus 4, and then you like taking the 30 off at the end. Okay. Mary, tell me what you're defending and what you did.
I think I'm going to defend 44,
Okay.
so I don't know what I did wrong.
Okay. All right, tell me what you did.
And now it's in my head. When I was doing the problem, mine was the same as science, but I thought when I got the 4, I thought I was supposed to add the 4 to the 40.
Does it make sense now why Syed subtracted that? The problem said to take 34 away, and he took his 30 and his 4 away in 2 different parts. Okay. Okay. Andrew, what you do?
I added 6 to the 40. I mean 6 to the 34.
Okay.
And then
To get 40?
and then I added 30 more, approaching the 40, which got me to 70.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
And then the 30 and the 6 make 36.
Okay, so that got you to 70, and so you just you basically counted up without another one. So you knew You went to a number that ended in a 0 by adding a 6, and then you knew that 30 more made 70, and 30 and 6 make 36. All right, I see. Did you follow Andrew? Okay. All right, Grant, do you have a different way? Okay. Which one are you defending first?
36.
Okay.
I took the 70 and I made it 76 minus 40. And 76 minus 40 is 36.
That was a more simple problem than this one, wasn't it? Can you explain why you or how you renamed it and knew that it would work?
I tried to find the nearest 10 for the 34, and that was 40. Well, yeah.
Okay.
And so then, I had to add it to the 72.
What did you add to 34 to get to 46? Okay.
And the same on the other side. 70 plus 6 is 76.
Okay. So you kind of knew that if you shifted on a number line, that it would be the same problem, but this one was easier. All right. Did you follow what Grant did?
Yes.
All right. Are we convinced this is 36?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Now that we've taken some time to actually see and hear what Number Talks looks like, let's break it down for you. So as we begin, let's think about how did she create this culture? And then an environment that elicited students' response and mathematical discourse. Well, it starts with thinking through what environment do you have, even to the placement of where the students will be during a Number Talks. You have to be thinking about how can I facilitate classroom discussions, and we'll talk about these a little deeper. What is my role? What is the role of mental math in the classroom? And then, did I actually plan ahead of time purposeful computation problems? And so as you think about, this is our first passcode, purposeful computation problems. So write that down. This key represents success because this is the first step in actually creating a Number Talks, a safe, risk-free environment for students to actually share their strategies where they know they will not be judged for their thinking, but just as a learning and thinking out loud place. You have to build a cohesive math community by making sure that all the students know that all strategies are going to be accepted and worked through. Students will have the opportunity to share with each other, respecting their answers, and understanding that that's part of the process. Failure is really only the opportunity to begin again more successfully. So if the answer is wrong, it's not about the answer. Let's dig deep and think about how did we get there? What was the strategy that we used? So we're going to be accepting everything, and that is a piece that needs to be discussed with the class so that they understand this is the culture that we need to build a safe and risk-free environment. Don't forget that other students might be asking questions of other students, and so that's what we want. We want the teacher to be the facilitator. And so as we think about how can we do this, we can start off easily by taking the math out, taking the stress of doing some computation, and just doing a simple pattern. So as you see, you can project a dot pattern on the screen or another type of pattern where students are just asked to tell me how many dots there were, and then how did you see them? So some students may come up with the right amount of dots. Other students may falter a little bit, but we just write it all down. And then we get into the Number Talk strategies. How did you come up with that? And so you can display that pattern again, and then students can then share how did they see it and how did they calculate it. And it allows other students to see. So if a student says, well, I saw this as two triangles, one on the left and one on the right, another student might actually open his eyes up to see the same type of pattern. Some might have already seen it themselves. Other students may say, I see it as a 5 with an extra dot in the center, so I knew that it was 6. This just creates that culture that it's not about the answer, it's about the strategies and how you see it. The second piece that we talked about to create this number talks environment is classroom discussions. So we need to make sure that students are clarifying their thinking and that we are asking clarifying questions as the facilitator. We don't put words in their mouth. We'll ask them to rephrase it. Other students can help chime in. But if you say, did you mean this? More than likely, they're going to say, oh, yes, that's right, because they just are wanting to move on, or it might actually be just a little bit tense for them to speak in front of the class, and they might not have that risk-free sense yet. Don't forget that we consider and test other strategies to see if they are mathematically logical, not just for that problem, but for other numbers. We investigate and apply mathematical relationships. And so our job is to help them see, not to see for them, but to help them see. And to remember that we're trying to build a collection of efficient strategies, not the endless number of strategies that you could use to actually solve them, but what would be the most efficient way to come up with the answer. And then making decisions about choosing the efficient way. Our role as the teacher is really just to be the facilitator, to be kind of blank-faced and to accept the answers. And if you notice that in the video, she was accepting the answers, accepting the strategies, no judgment. She was questioning the students, listening intently for clarifications, as well as misconceptions, and then learning a little bit herself about her students, as well as maybe some new strategies that she had not thought of in the past. Remember, what answer did you get? How did you solve the problem? Number 4, the role of mental math. How can we have students share their strategies in a very short period of time? It is about utilizing some turn and talks, and that we encourage students to build on the number relationships to solve the problems instead of relying on these memorized procedures. They're looking at decomposing and recomposing numbers to make sense of the mathematics. Our goal might be different depending on our grade level. And so when we think about primary grade levels versus intermediate and beyond, think through the lens of what are we exposing students to and what type of opportunities. Developing number sense, maybe developing fluency with very small numbers, subitizing and making tens might be our primary goals, where our intermediate goals and beyond are really connecting those math ideas, place values, fluency, properties, and number sense as well. And finally, our role as the teacher, as we listen and learn from our students, really is to focus on the relationships of the numbers. And so we need to be looking for purposeful computation problems that will help facilitate these conversations, where we guide students to where they are, not going beyond, but a comfort zone. It's important when we think about, our students are way beyond whole number computation. They might be able to do whole number computation procedurally, but maybe we need to take a step back and investigate, do they understand that we can decompose numbers? Are there other strategies that could help build mental math strategies and facilitate that mathematical discourse that may not have been there in grades past? Keep in mind, we're always thinking about the platforms and the opportunities for allowing students to invent and construct and make sense of these important foundations in numbers. When you get started, keep in mind that you are really going to be, as she had done, designating a small area or designating a separate area, making sure that students know that you're going to be putting away your paper and pencil and going to be focusing on mental math strategies and listening and engaging in some wonderful discourse. So it kind of is an area that, spurs excitement and enthusiasm for the students. We need to provide enough wait time to allow students to think not only of the answer, but the strategies, another strategy to actually get to that answer, and then maybe a third strategy. So providing enough wait time. Always accepting and considering and respecting the responses from students, and encouraging them to communicate with each other. There are videos, like we had said, the one you just watched is one from Sherry Parrish's book, The Blue Book. And what I would recommend, just from my experience, is that you watch them, do the same type of problem, experience that with students, and then at the end, after your number talks, maybe as you're getting into this first few weeks of building number talks, how about showing the students the videos themselves and letting them see the expectations and the different types of strategies that can be built? So sharing them with students is an important piece too, if you have access to the videos. When we implement, we need to make sure we keep it short, 5 to 15 minutes. And when I say 5 to 15 minutes, really err on the end of the 5, not the 15, because if you target 15, it's going to probably push you to 20. And then before you know it, you might be putting the lesson that you have on the back burner because you're going to run out of time. Do it every day for the first 2 weeks just to create instructional routines for the students, and that predictability will help build that safe and secure environment. Encourage students to share and clarify their thinking by asking questions. Have that bank of questions, and give students lots of practice with the same strategy. That's that purposeful, or selecting that purposeful problems, so that you may be using a string of problems that facilitate the constant difference, or the halving and doubling strategy, or there are so many different strategies that you can choose from, but giving students additional practice with those types of problems. Teach intentionally. Know what your goal is for that particular week of string of problems. And then always create that safe and support environment. Encourage your students and praise them for staying positive during these sessions. The last thing I want you to think about is how she encourages the students with something as simple as writing their name next to the strategy that they are sharing. That's an important piece. It also is a great way for you to create a digital footprint, or a footprint of who's sharing. Also, labeling the strategies, what they're called, so that you can see and students can see how they're used in different problem situations. And don't forget to vary the number talks to meet the range of your students. As you think through this list for tips for implementation, the second passcode is keep it short, 5 to 15 minutes. That's an important piece. Keep it short, 5 to 15 minutes. That's the second passcode. If you have access to the videos, whether they're in the number talk whole computation or they're in the fractions, decimals, and percentage book, I would highly recommend just thinking through, if you're a kindergarten teacher, what does it look like in kindergarten setting? If you're a second, third grade teacher, what does it look like in that type of setting? And the tools that you will need to facilitate a number talks. There are hand signals that you probably noticed during that video. When we said earlier, no hand raising, the hand raising that you saw was students volunteering to share their strategies, but you probably picked up on, and if you didn't, go back and just rewatch that portion of this session where they're holding their hands to their chest. These hand signals are not displayed up in the air. They're held close to their chest so that they do not disturb someone else's thinking time. And so it's visible for the teacher, not so much for the other students. The other piece is the open-ended prompts to support this discourse that we want. If students struggle with beginning a conversation or a question, you can have these posters hung on your wall. And if you're in a virtual setting, they can be part of the background on your slides. So what is the format for Number Talks? Well, it quite simply is the teacher presents the problem. You saw that. Then the students are coming up with answers. So she's giving wait time, but it's not just the answer, but it's multiple ways to get to that answer, multiple strategies to get to that answer. And then the students share their answers where the teacher accepts all the answers. Then they share their thinking. And as they share their thinking, they might decide that that particular answer that someone shared isn't a viable answer any longer. And so they have the ability to actually revise their thinking or revise their answers. Students sharing their thinking is the most powerful piece. So we want to make sure that at the end, that after all the thinking strategies have been shared, named, their names written next to it, labeled, that that the class agrees upon the real answer for the problem. Now, these steps are repeated for the next problem, and I wouldn't recommend doing too many problems. The strings you can do multiple problems quite quickly. An example of a number string for constant difference found in Sherry Parrish's book on Number Talks, Whole Number Computations. So you might start with purposely choosing this problem because you're working with subtraction. The first thing that you notice is that they're in a sequence of like problems. So 50 subtract 25, and students might come up with a wonderful strategy. And then the next thing that you notice is that you have one that's not so easily computed. And you can build upon them and say things like, remember in the last problem when we used that constant difference and we added 1 to each, and then we found that that same problem, 49 subtract 24, is just the same as 50 subtract 25. But then you can also see where you can use that same thinking when the third problem is introduced, 51 subtract 26, but instead of adding, you subtract 1 from each. And then your problem is the same as 50 subtract 25. But then the last and final problem is an extension of that and going a little bit beyond and trying to increase that generalization where they're thinking through that same strategy. Providing them with opportunities in these strings helps solidify that type of strategy and put it in their toolbox, because the kids can actually see the relationships built right in these purposeful strings that are found in the Number Talk books by Sherry Parrish. If you're in a virtual setting, I want you to think about what I've just displayed on the screen. The students in virtual setting versus face-to-face still need to engage in discourse and critiquing the reasoning of others. That is your passcode 3 as well. So one of the things that I would like to share with you is the slide deck that I created for virtual Number Talks. And when I was creating this, I was trying to think, what could I create that would be create a kind of instructional routine so that it's very predictable. The students always know what they're going to be doing once it's been kind of like demonstrated. So there will always be the sentence starters in the upper right-hand corner. In the center will always be the place where the problem will be, surrounded by red to track their eyes to that. They will always have draggable hand signals to the appropriate cell that goes with their student number. The student numbers are in a table that are in a background, so they can't be altered the size or shape or deleted. There is a text box table that is at the bottom where the teacher can capture the strategies the students are are using. So this one says something like the very first one is going to be in red, the second one is going to be in purple font or purple color. The next one is going to be, it's green, and then the last one is going to be in blue. And so that the slide deck that you have also will have the same larger view. Now, if you feel like you can type in here and capture students thinking within this blue box, that's fine. I also practiced this on my own, and I thought, okay, well, let's just see if I can type. And what you see on the side is the actual, and I'm going to scroll down to it. What I originally typed, and I thought, oh, as a teacher, this is what I was like, oh, I'm trying to capture everything the student says. I just need to get to the point though, so that it's not too cumbersome. Remember, clear, concise, consistent language is an important piece for explicit instruction. And when we capture too much, we are unable to provide an environment where students can focus on what really is happening. So I went from this black text to rewriting it and in a more concise manner. Now, itself, if you can capture it here, that's fine. But I've also created past that additional slides. So I said I wasn't typing the first time on the actual slide with the table on it, this slide here. I went to a blank slide and I start capturing everything. And what I realized is that I was here in the black text, I was capturing way too much. And so I needed to bring it down. And that's something that as a teacher, as a facilitator, it's just you're going to have to be working on yourself. And the beauty is that you can, delete and just capture the rest. And then all I did was basically take it, copy it, and then I went back to this and I just dropped it in here and I pasted it right into this particular cell. I go to the next slide. It would originally be blank. The nice thing is it's already been color coded so that it matches the color coding in the table. And then I would capture the thinking of the next student, which was Jesse. And I just typed what Jesse was thinking. Jesse was using the doubling and halving strategy. And so I followed that thought process down. All I did was I can copy it. And then I can go through here and then I can just take it and I can paste it. It's too large. And all I know is that size 12 is the font that I need. So I can then just go back and I can just shrink it down to size 12 font, and then it should fit. If I needed to shrink it a little bit further, I can do that. And then students can then engage in, do they agree? Is this one that they used? And then as students are taking their agrees and placing them on there, you can then look for ones that if a student still has had a strategy that hasn't been highlighted yet, can take and have their agree right over top of it. So they don't need to remove it necessarily. They can just place their agree. And then as you go through, you might start seeing that there are a few other students that still have strategies out, and you can call on those students. There might be times where students have questions and you can or they might have comments about they no longer want to use this particular strategy anymore. So, put an X next to it, so that you realize that this is no longer a valid answer. The point is that if we're engaging students in number talks virtually or face-to-face, is that our job really is just to capture their thinking. And we can easily capture it on Google Slides. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create environments where students can engage in critical conversations, mathematical discourse, where they're understanding that numbers and what number sense really means. Whether we're typing directly on the blank slide or we go in and we just type the students and we capture their thinking directly on this particular slide, the strata. we are still engaging in some critical conversations and giving the students the opportunities to think through different strategies, to understand there are multiple components to number sense. And so we want to have them critically evaluate and understand other people's thinking so that they can have additional tools in their toolbox. Remember, the slide deck is there to do not one problem, but then maybe engage them in a second problem. So there is going to be another duplicate set of slides that are set up the exact same way. There is, in fact, the very last one, an editable slide. So this is where all of this table where you can actually go through and change this to student name. So here we are, and I want to just give you a little tip on how to change the background so that it'll fit your classroom. If you go to the editable slide, that's the last slide in the slide deck, you will then be able to change and delete any of the features on here. They're just set on there. And so I can change the names, I can add some additional student names. I can also delete the sentence stems or the sentence starters. But this, where it says in the red box where it says click to add title, that's not going to show up once we download it. So then we're just going to go to File. We're going to go to Download, and we're going to download it as a PNG or a PNG file, PNG image, and it's going to show up in the bottom of your screen. What you're going to then do is you're going to go to the actual slide deck or the slide. Here we go. The slide that you has your old slide format on there. And this is the background. Remember, this is the background, but you'll want to use this one because it also has in front of the background, it has these tables that are already created for you with the formatting for the color coding if you like that. So then all you're going to do is you're going to go to background. You're going to click on background. You're going to choose the image. You're going to drag that one you just created, that you downloaded, that PNG file right in there. And then voila, with the magic backgrounds, your old background with a 30 and just student numbers is going to be gone and your new one will be there. It's still going to be where you can edit this slide with a table. You want to make sure that you still have your draggable pieces. So yes, you do. And, but these are no longer movable. You can still click in here because I've already embedded on this particular slide a box that you can add your problem. So that's how you change it. And you will do it to the second set of slides as well so that it meets your needs. A lot of background, but I just wanted you to have it so that you can personalize it. So as we end today's session, let's just go back and revisit our learning goal where we want to embed Number Talks into your current practices. Where will you intentionally schedule time for Number Talks? Think of the resources that were provided through this session, a reflection of your current practices, and we hope that if you need any additional assistance, you reach out and contact us. Let's stop and listen to third graders as they reflect on how Number Talks have changed their perspective of mathematics. This is through U Cubed with Dr. Joe Bowler from Stanford University.
It's like you're free. You can do whatever you want. It's like breaking down, decompose.
You can do what you want to get
You
an
can make
answer.
friendly numbers. You can like break them down to multiplication.
Did you use math in those ways before this class? Or did you break it down and do all those different things?
No, not at all.
So how is it different?
Well, it's like Nick teaches us like how to break it down.
That was just a short snippet. You can listen to the entire reflection. The link is provided in the training guide. As we go and look at our training guide, think through, we've been able to jot down the 3 passcode phrases that are in this session. Don't forget, step 2 is looking at the additional resources and download your slide deck if you pursue Number Talks virtually. And then step 3 is to access your certificate. Go to the link provided in that blue here word and enter the passcodes, and your certificate should be mailed to you. Please make sure you put your email address in correctly, as that is how you will receive your certificate. If you enter that incorrectly with the slightest typo, it will go somewhere else in virtual space and you may not have access to it. So double check that. It's been a pleasure working with you today. Thank you for your time and all you do.